Hypothetically, since culture is staged and a stage is like symbolism, whereas culture is portrayed as the stage. Repetition is another figure of speech used in this expression. Words like sans, age, etc. are repeated dialogue. Comparatively, culture is stage and a stage dialogue that is contingent on a meticulous understanding of history, since the annals of history can teach us a view espoused by Christopher Nowak. Culture exists anywhere humans exist, and no two cultures are exactly the same because the stage set is usually indicated by the author, but the degree of detail and specificity of this rendering vary from one author to another and from one literary period to another. This figure of speech is demystified post-modernity in the context symbolically is like a stage show and all human beings are merely actors in dialogue. Plausibly, although this intellectual linguistic composition is put differently in a different time, yet it produces a rhetorical effect upon this generation and future generations. This dialogue creates the characteristics that take on a repeating pattern and by extension creates a given opinion which may deal with subjective matters in which there is no conclusive finding, or it may deal with facts which are sought to be disputed by the logical fallacy that one is entitled to their opinion. Historically, philosophers use dialogue, especially in classical literature, exclusively in Plato's Republic, for rhetorical and argumentative purposes. Generally, dialogue makes a literary work enjoyable and lively. This explanation allows me to exert privilege as a literary technique to activate the attention of global citizens at this time to be engaged in this discussion with one another. Whether culture is stage and a stage, it is a pretext and a rhetorical device to evoke a particular reaction from you, the reader, simultaneously juxtaposing the elements of culture, namely knowledge of a particular group of people, encompassing language, religion, cuisine, social habits, music, and arts, intertwined with human behavior, natural disasters, political unrest, health scares, or an unimaginable act which can happen at any time. For example, crisis management, massive widespread disruption strikes, anywhere in the world, causing cultural practitioners to pivot and navigate quickly in this evolving technological space. On reflection, medieval theatre encompassed theatrical performance in the period between the fall of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century and the beginning of the Renaissance in approximately the 15th century. During the 10th century, medieval drama was for the most part very religious and moral in its themes, staging, and traditions. On this developmental journey, the annals of history have unearthed that communication across great distances have been accomplished since antiquity through media like the written word. Explicitly and implicitly suggests that there is a paradigm shift which has changed our stage to the extent that it makes traditional media like printed newspapers not so predominant. Given the logistics and specifics of historical dates and events, chronologically it showed how technology, a method of communication over a period of time, evolved, remained a very important component of social media to this very day. It should be noted that within the time frame from 1792, the advent of the telegraph, until now, Social media is a virtual ecosystem. It is important to note that since global citizens are social creatures and we thrive on social interactions to maintain a healthy life and mind, we have also caused culture to be staged and make it a stage. In this context, this way of life has put in place a framework that contextualizes social media, taps into our intrinsic needs as human beings, since social media provide a platform to meet new people and make friends often cross international borders. Social media allow users to join groups of others who share their passions and interests. Social media sites and social media apps are very popular today. When we compare and contrast the period 1800 to 2020, it is implied that culture is staged and a stage where virtual meetings converge, which allow people to share information and data in real time without being physically located together. As a consequence, there are now virtual sites to remotely use campus computing sites, Windows software from your own device, or rather than meeting in a physical location with people around the world, regardless of their location, use video, audio, and text to link up online. In light of the aforementioned technological development, in relation to the National Theatre remaining closed until June 30th, 2020, such actions invariably make it virtually possible for live performances of popular shows, which can be streamed weekly on the theatre's YouTube channel as part of the National Theatre at Home initiative. What's more, educational institutions such as schools, universities, and libraries can access the National Theatre collection online, showing everything from classic Shakespearean dramas to avant-garde productions from the Domar Warehouse and Bridge Theatre. Comparably, staged or stage is a linguistic construct and a protocol of theatre which is explicitly expressed, becomes implicit and or inferred in every culture. Therefore, this double entendre is overt, especially during its execution in this dialogue at a practical level that becomes a stage in the natural development of art. The more culture is staged, and a stage is significant and requires hindsight that consummates lasting influence, a view espoused by Ruth Katz and Ruth Cohen. The more that I focus with my lens as a student of film, I have observed that the technique mise-en-scène is also operational because it allows me narrative license, not to be used in a humorous or pejorative sense as media art works, but a pretext to analyze freedom of culture practitioners to validate the posit whether culture is stage or a stage. Symbolically, on this page, it is noted that 12,000 career practitioners are taking possession of the world stage. This human behavior can be construed or is synonymous with actors, since actors navigate the 9 performance space on the theater stage. Further, in this context, clothing and uniform mean a set of standard clothing global citizens wear, and for the purpose of this discourse are deemed a costume is the distinctive style of a dress of an individual or group that reflects class, gender. Actors wear costumes on stage, likewise clothing and uniform. Hypothetically, representatively and literally, in this context, the director of culture will behave like the director of film. The director of culture is responsible for interpreting culture. Culture is an ethos, humanities, philosophy, nation, tradition, customs, race, ethnicity, value, principle, belief, ideology, and or even a way of life. For example, culture is one of the main goals of education policy in Kenya. Because of the aforesaid illustration, it is logical to give good reason for culture as a representation of a system. In this abstract setting, since culture is stage and a stage amplifies character, emotion, or the dominant mood, which has physical, social, psychological, emotional, and economic significance in the precincts of all societies, just like in film. Directors of culture are responsible for presenting the guiding principles and values that underpin cultural policy methodology to monitor the impact of cultural policy research, evaluation globally, and implementing goals that reflects the vision of its director to worldwide decisions which are made differently due to the potential impact of the cultural industries during any crisis. The lighting in this context is symbolic of cultural practitioners who have knowledge but are also quick-witted, have an incisive ability to see to the heart of the problem at hand, and are used as awareness, knowledge, and understanding as a result proven to be more cost-effective. In a real world, irregularities will be visible for only a brief period of time. Therefore, the insensitivity, direction, and quality of a person's intellect or knowledge is equivalent to influence on an audience's understanding of whether culture is a stage or staged event. Cultural highlights call attention to ensure its desired effects such as mood, time of day or night, season, glamour, or the way it affects the way events are rendered, both in terms of depth and focus on the audience, determines whether culture is staged or a stage. Cultural aspects enable arts and cultural activities and practices within all communities to secure, enhance, and develop affordable and accessible where artists or cultural workers can live, work, and share effectively, determining mood or relationships between elements in the cultural world. One of the most important concepts with regard to the composition of culture has to do with cultural stage. Is the objective because cultural practitioners are maintaining a balance of symmetry, composition, and space within their frame. Each event yields a different way of looking at the world and is basic to the expressive meaning of culture being staged and a stage. In the final analysis, what, when, where, who, and why is the criterion that authorizes whether culture is staged or staged. These actions set the framework for an improved infrastructure, smart social media, email marketing, online registration, payment processes increase revenues from tourism and trade, employment creation, and heightened public and public pride. I suppose, like anything else, the advancement of technology changed the paradigm of the way events are planned today. For instance, event management software. Added to this frame, there is a school of thought that suggests that cultural practitioners are under immeasurable anxiety to produce cultural engaging events at a short notice. It is because of the aforesaid arguments staged on this stage that this dialogue reasons out whether culture is staged and is a stage was not the issue, but it is necessary to take into account the dialogical relationships of symbolism and philosophy, since these constituents bring together elements as realism in staging all culture. This theoretical figure is an intentional deviation from ordinary language chosen to produce a rhetorical effect and an interaction which goes beyond a mere cliché. Culture is staged. Importantly, although the same event is staged daily and annually, yet each presentation is perceived differently. Overall, whether culture is staged and or a stage is not the issue, but how it is executed is contingent on a meticulous understanding of history, since the annals of history can teach us a view espoused by Christopher Nowak. Therefore, culture exists anywhere humans exist, and no two cultures are exactly the same because the stage set is usually indicated by the author, but the degree of detail, logistics, and specificity of this rendering vary from one author to another and from one literary period to another.